you will need a pen and paper for this video because we are digging deep, really deep into the buying process. In the previous video, we talked about finding the right deal. The danger, however, isn't in the deal. It's in the paperwork. You think you're buying a house, but what you're really stepping into is a multi-layer legal and financial contract that, if misunderstood, can drain your savings, kill your momentum, or leave you locked into terms you never fully agreed to. This video isn't just about buying the right property. It's about walking into a deal with your eyes open. Whether you're investing in your first home or you're building your real estate portfolio, I want to guide you so that you can do it with a strategic lens, so that you can evaluate every single decision before you sign in. You win by understanding the fine print, my darling, and using it as leverage to get yourself the most amount of money off that deal. So here are the things we'll be talking about in this video. Do you need a realtor? Hint, hint, yes. We'll unpack how finding the right one, when to go solo, and how to spot the red flags before they cost you. We'll also talk about the contract. What are some contingencies, the timelines, and I'll also break down the legal languages that most buyers often skip. We'll talk about the appraisal, the inspections, the closing, right? So this section will walk you through the full process, step by step, what to ask, what to expect, and how to protect yourself. Yes, it's a long video. Bear with me because this is going to be a great one. We'll also talk about how to negotiate like a pro. You'll learn how to ask for what you want, when to push back, and how to turn an inspection into deal leverage. And an important question a lot of people tend to ask when they're buying a property, especially an investment property, is do I need an LLC? We'll clear up the confusion around business structure and when using one can actually protect you and why it really doesn't. By the end of this video, my goal is that you will know exactly how to move through the whole buying process with clarity and control. No guesswork, no overwhelm, no surprises, because power isn't just in the purchase, it is in the preparation. So, my darling, if you are ready to take control of your next deal, not just the price, but the terms of protection and the strategy, keep watching because we are about to break it all down. Welcome to Lessons Lived, everybody. My name is Nandy. I'm so glad you found this space. Ours is a community of ambitious women who take action. We leverage our full-time jobs to build scalable side businesses because we know that wealth isn't an escape plan, it's a power move. So if you are ready to turn your career into capital, your expertise into income, and your business into a legacy, you, my darling, are in the right place. Let's just dive right into the buying process of real estate. Let's start the conversation by unpacking whether or not you need a realtor. A realtor is a valuable asset when you're navigating the buying process, especially if you are a first-time home buyer or you are investing in a property. While having a realtor is not required, a good realtor can take the load off your back. They can provide you market insight. They can give you access to the MLS. The MLS is not publicly available unless you have a friend who's willing to give you access to it. A good realtor will negotiate on your behalf to get you the best price and terms. They can also guide you through the complex paperwork and all of the legal requirements. Because trust me, when you're buying real estate, especially post 2008 after the crash, the amount of paperwork will drown your honey. So having a realtor who has gone through the process and does it every single time would help you go through all of those hurdles. Now the question is, how do you find and vet the right realtor? So when it comes to a realtor, I'm going to speak from experience. I have no shame in making sure that my realtor is going to be right for me. I am somebody who has bought in many different states And when that's the case, you just need to interview a lot of different people and see which one you connect with up here and over here. They really need to understand what you are trying to do and why you want to do those things. Because by them understanding you, they will be able to direct you in a way that a realtor who's just doing a transaction will never be able to do. The best case scenario is if you buy in the same city, in the same state, you will already have your realtors that you traditionally work with, so you stick with them, honey. And another great way to find or to have your network of realtors is through your local real estate investors association. Don't take those for granted. If you are serious about real estate investing, you need a community. And often, most of your connections, lender, realtor, will come from that community. Now, let's talk about those criteria for finding the right one. So you need referrals and you need research. You need to ask for recommendation from people you trust, and you also need to check online reviews, right? If you don't already have that network of people, let's say you are buying outside of your state, you absolutely have to make sure that they have referrals, that they have good reviews, right? Look for people you can trust to give you those recommendations. Interview multiple agents. Absolutely. You need to make sure you compare the experience, you compare the communication style, you compare their market knowledge, and you compare their connection to you. Are they actively listening to really try to understand what you are looking for so that they can deliver for you? You also need to check their credentials. You need to make sure that their license have relevant experience in your desired market. If you're a first time home buyer, you need somebody who works with a lot of first time home buyers, and that is most realtors. However, when you become a little bit more experienced, or if you're looking for very specific types of deals, let's say you're looking for a burr that you might convert into an Airbnb, that you might convert into a midterm rental, does this particular realtor understand those types of strategies? Because let me tell you this, not every realtor understands how to work with investors. Some realtors don't even understand what investors do. And then you have those who think that what investors do is illegal. You shouldn't be hoarding all those properties. You should just buy one property for you and your family and live in it until you die. You need to find a realtor who understand a lot of different buying strategies, those creative buying strategies, because they will be able to direct you the right way if they already have some experience. I want you to also discuss fees and contracts. You need to understand their commission structure and any exclusivity agreements. Now, some of them don't feel so comfortable sharing what the seller is giving them. Although this has changed, oh my gosh, I haven't bought a property with the new changes that they have now, where I think the buyer might even pay the realtor. I don't know. So that's very different. I haven't bought a property with those new changes. I actually need to look into them myself. But you need to take the time to really understand those fee structures. Some realtors will make you sign a contract so that you are not actually working with any other realtors. So read those fine prints very closely. I have always signed a contract, but usually, like, I think with my first one, we didn't sign the contract until we actually found the property and we were ready to close. But when I was just looking, there was no contract, okay? So you need to really understand all of the structures. Some people are a little bit more finicky about that than others. You just need that connection with your realtor. You also need to assess their network. This is often overlooked. They need to be well connected and they have to be able to provide you all of the professionals that you would need to go through that buying process. Do they have access to inspectors, lenders, attorneys, all of the different professionals that you may need to call so that you can really assess that property the right way? So, for example, I was living in California. I bought in Oklahoma, but in Oklahoma, I first started looking in one part of the country, let's say the Northeast, and then I went from the Northeast all the way to the Southwest. Let me tell you something. The realtor didn't have connections in that area. So we needed somebody to assess the plumbing. We needed somebody to assess the septic. It very quickly turned into a headache, even though I loved my realtor and she was amazing. Thank God, she was actually very resourceful. She was dynamic. She took control of the whole situation. But it would have been hard had she not been somebody who is driven because she had no connections in that area. It makes it so much easier if they are in that area and they have connections. Because now that I actually need somebody to go check some things into that property, I don't really have a trusted partner because my realtor had to drive 5 hours into the new market that I chose. So make sure that they are from the area and they have a pre-existing network of professionals that they work with, that they trust, who they can get along with, and that they have really good connections with. Whether or not you need a realtor would really depend on your own ability to do your own due diligence. I highly recommend that you always use a realtor, not just because they have the experience and they can do what you would do yourself very quickly, but honestly, your time should be better spent than chasing this contract, this paperwork. Did this person do this, this, and that? If for nothing else, the realtor takes away a lot of the stress, the nonsense, administrative work that you should be doing so that you can invest your time getting the cash and the money to actually be able to invest in that real estate investment deal. So your time is better spent than being a realtor. That's just my personal opinion. But if you are going to do it yourself, you really need to take the time to understand the full buying process, all of the paperwork, all of the different parties involved, right? There are lots of books that you can buy. I'm going to link a few books here that you can use so that you fully understand the closing process. With that said, let's now dig into the contract, the inspection, and the closing process. So these are things that if you don't have a realtor, you will be doing all of these different things yourself. So pay really close attention and understand that this is basic, honey. There's a lot more to it than the things that I'm sharing with you. But this will give you a good big picture and it will give you a good basic understanding that you can build off of. And the best way to learn about real estate, I will be saying it in every video, is by doing it. Because there's no amount of reading, there's no amount of watching videos, there's no amount of mentoring that would really help you understand the process. There's only you taking the time, taking the effort to actually go through it. Buying a property involves several critical steps. You need to understand these steps in order to ensure that you are making an informed decision and you are avoiding costly mistakes. The first thing you need to understand is the contract. This is your purchasing agreement. It will outline all of the terms, the price, the contingencies, the deadlines. You need to review carefully everything. You need to review the financing. You need to review the home appraisal. You need to review the home inspection, right? All of these things is so that you can protect yourself from any disasters the sellers could be hiding. So you need to really make sure that you are reviewing that contract with an attorney if needed. Usually working with your realtor for most deals that you would do, your realtor will have access to an attorney that they're going through the whole process. I never personally worked with an attorney, but I trusted my realtor and I trusted the closing company that we chose because they had an amazing lawyer that was reviewing all of the documents. That's just me, right? I tend to buy conventional properties. When I bought one time, I went through a distressed property purchase. I did bring on a separate lawyer to make sure that everything was ironed out. It was costly though. Here are some of the key documents that will be included in the contract. The offer letter. This is the letter where you and your realtor are signing it and you're officially making the offer to the seller. You will need your seller disclosures. This is where the seller is disclosing anything that could be a red flag with the property that they are aware of. By law, they have to disclose certain key things. And if we find them, I'm going to try to put some pictures over here of what the offer letter looks like, of what the disclosure letter looks like, and what the loan statement would look like. I will try to look for mine and I will put them here, right? So the offer letter, the seller's disclosures, and the loan estimate. Your loan estimate is when you are working with your lending officer to make sure that your interest rate is there, how much you pay in closing costs, how much you pay for inspections. They have highlighted all of that already, so you have real clarity of how much this whole thing is going to cost you. Okay? I want you to be aware of earnest money deposit. These funds show your commitment, but they can be forfeited under certain circumstances. So you need to really understand, well, how much is going to be that earnest money. Usually your realtor, if they will understand the area, they will understand the market. When I bought my first property, when the market was kind of lukewarm, I barely put down $500 of earnest money. But honey, when I bought in the middle of the pandemic, like a little bit post pandemic, when everybody was buying houses and nothing was available, people were putting $50,000 cash above market value, cash offers. Girl, that $500 was not acceptable. People were putting 10, 15, 20, sometimes even $50,000 earnest money. Yes, because the earnest money, though, allows you to almost put the house on hold. And if you don't actually move forward with buying the property, you forfeit that earnest money. So let me tell you something. Your realtor will work with you to really try to understand what type of market you're in and how much is a good amount to put down for earnest money. But legally, different states will have different expectations for earnest money. You need to understand what are the timelines for your due diligence. This is important, right? Do you have 7 days? Do you have 14 days? Do you have a month? Usually, I think when I did mine, it was only about 7 to 10 business days. That is usually common, right? You need to understand the financial approval process and what the closing is going to look like. So you will sit down with your realtor and you will make sure you ask them question, well, what does the timeline look like? When do we do this? When do we do this? And when do we do that? Some realtors are better at educating their clients than others, right? When it comes to your contract, you need to be paying attention to clauses related to repairs, price adjustment, appraisal contingencies, so that you can avoid any unexpected issues. After you do your inspections, which we're about to cover next, how long do you have to do repairs? You need to make sure your realtor highlights all of this for you. And how long do you have after that to negotiate a price adjustment? Now that you have a basic understanding of the contract, let's talk about your home inspection. A professional home inspection will help you identify potential issues before closing. So some common inspections include structural integrity. Yes, you need to understand that that house will still be standing after 30 years of you having that house, okay? You need to understand the plumbing. You need to understand the electrical, right? How healthy is the electrical, the plumbing, any type of pest management. We had to do some termite assessment, right? Does the house have any termites? Because that's a big one for the area that I was buying in. Because trust me, honey, you don't want termites. If any major issues arises through that inspection, and I will do a separate video sharing the inspection process in detail, you can renegotiate or walk away based on your contract contingencies. Some properties may require additional inspections. You might need to do a radon testing, mold assessment, sewage. I had to do a sewage assessment because I had a septic systems. And the truth is, some sellers may refuse to make repairs in that process. Usually, it's all about the negotiation that you both have. My parents recently purchased a duplex that needed a lot of work, but the duplex was purchased at a significantly lower price. So any extra repairs that were identified in the inspection process, the seller was like, I'm not going to do it, right? It really turned into a big fight. We had a great realtor. My parents had a great realtor who went in there and really negotiated on behalf of my parents. They ended up closing on the deal. And as we speak, they just put the second unit on the market. My dad renovated the whole thing himself. And when the seller refuses to make any type of repairs, you need to decide, is this property still worth keeping, or do you need to determine whether or not you want to withdraw from the deal, right? So that would be a decision only you will be able to make. Is the deal worth it that you're willing to put up with whatever the inspection determine or things that needs repair? If it's things that are small that you can easily fix, it's not worth it. But when it's one of those big five, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, roofing, or foundation, cut your losses. You need to review the final inspection report. You need to make sure you go through it carefully with a fine tooth comb. If you are lucky and you found a good realtor, you will sit down and you guys will go through that inspection report one by one. My realtor was fantastic. She really took the time to be like, we need to work on this, we need to work on this. She took the inspection report and then created a separate report with everything we needed to have the seller fixed. These are all things that a realtor will be taking care of on your behalf. So for all of the people who think that realtors are not worth their money, for the administrative manual task of them doing all of this, it's so worth it. We talked about the contract. We talked about the home inspection. Now let's talk about the closing process. You need to finalize your mortgage and ensure that all required documents are submitted. This is why a great lender is just as important as a great realtor, because they are working together and they are working side by side. You're working with the realtor to make sure that the house itself has all of the T's dotted, all of the T's crossed, all of the I's dotted. But then from the financial side, you need to be working with a really good lender to make sure that from the financial perspective, because honey, let me tell you something, you could have the perfect deal, you could have the perfect house, but if the money, the loan is not written right, it's not formatted correctly. By formatting correctly, what I mean is that sometimes there are creative options that are available based on your situation, right? Let's say your credit score doesn't meet certain requirements. Some lenders who are experienced know how to work their magic behind the scenes to make sure that you end up getting approved by the bank. And that approval process, especially post 2008, requires sometimes some creativity from your lender. So you need a really good lender that you can trust. You need a good lender who has experience working with your specific type of situation. Let's say you are a self-employed person with a high credit score, but you don't have the typical 9 to 5 backing of a W-2 job. Do they have experience working with somebody with those challenges? Let's say you have a W-2 job and like me, you have 4 other properties, right? Does your realtor understand how to manage all of that? How to really understand Airbnb income, right? Midterm rental income, long term, like how to navigate all of these different strategies, because your situation may be a little bit more complex. So they will make sure that all of the documents needed are submitted, that it's formatted correctly, it has the right information. In this final process, it's also really important that you have a final walkthrough to check that all of those repairs you guys agreed on in that inspection were actually made. And you also want to make sure that the property is in expected condition. Closing day would involve you signing a lot of legal documents. Your hands are going to fall off, okay? Because it's going to be about this thick with all of the things that you would need. You will need to sign a lot of legal documents. You will need to also transfer ownership on that day. I do have to say this, don't sleep on that final inspection. My very first property, I signed the document. I was so proud to be a first time home. It's like I was both proud and nervous at the same time, right? Because I knew I wasn't buying the perfect property, but I was still excited. I signed the paperwork. My realtor did not show up. Yes, pick the right realtor. My realtor did not show up. Thank God one of my friends, who is now a realtor herself, an amazing realtor, did show up on that day, lended me a lot of support, and we got the keys. We drove from the place where we're doing the closing to the property. I walk in, I do my walkthrough, go into the garage. The whole ceiling was on the floor. Do the final walkthrough. Okay, I'll leave it there. The key documents that will be included here will be a closing disclosures, a promissory note, a deed of trust, and title insurance policy. So your closing disclosures will have everything that, like, pretty much a breakdown of all of the costs. Okay. Promissory note is pretty much going to be a document that you will sign that says, hey, you promise. Like, here, the closing disclosure will be like, hey, here's everything that you will owe us. Right? For the past 30 years, your money is coming to us, baby. And then the promissory note simply says, yes, I agree to pay you guys my paycheck. 40 to 60% of it, whatever that amount is going to be. And the deed of trust pretty much says, hey, here, I own this house. But technically, because I owe you money, you own the house. Okay? So the deed of trust just said you technically don't fully have the deed to the house because the bank technically owns your house. Right? So that deed that you have, it has a caveat, right? And then, of course, you will have your title insurance policy. And with the title insurance policy, this is really important. The title company needs to make sure that they really do the research to make sure that that property belongs to the person who is selling it to you and that they have the right to sell it to you. And this is why you doing everything in real estate can be so cumbersome, especially past the 2008 crash, because there have been people who kind of took matters into their own hands because they were like, oh, it's such a great deal, so and so, I'm just going to buy it directly from them, only to realize that, hey, that person who sold you that house technically doesn't really own that house because of this, and that. The right research wasn't done, right? So you want that title insurance because if you have that, that title company will be liable because they didn't do the right research. And in general, there are closing costs, and most of the time, the closing costs will be anywhere from 2 to 5% down, and that would be in your closing disclosures. And if you are lucky, right? Back in the days, it used to be common, but now it's not so common. The seller can pay for your closing costs. That is an option. So all your realtor will know whether or not that is a point of negotiation. And it's also important that you understand this, right? Closing part can take anywhere from 30 days to 60 to sometimes 90 days. There are things that can delay the closing. So you yourself need to make sure that all of your ducks are in a row. You need to make sure that your realtor and your lenders also have their ducks in a row. Because there are so many things both of them can do to F you up. And there are also things that you can do to F yourself up if you don't have your paperwork ready. I've been through this closing process almost 6 times, so I know between buying and refinancing, I know all of the paperwork that I need. My lenders and my realtors are always so shocked. I was like, I'm not here to play. I'm not here to play. I have a folder with all of the documents that they need. The minute that lender calls me, I was like, I will have this to you in 5 minutes. If I can get it in 5 minutes, I'm getting it to you by the end of the day because I don't want any delays. Okay? Because last minute lender request or appraisal discrepancy can significantly derail your closing process, right? You need to make sure that your funds for the down payment and closing costs that need to be wired are wired properly, and always make sure that you're verifying all of your bank details with your lenders to avoid fraud. Now, after you've closed on your property, you need to check. I have lived at places, so for example, in Colorado, they just automatically transferred everything. So in Colorado, you buy your property, you close on that property, the change of deed happens, they already know that now this property belongs to this person, and they make the change. You don't have to do anything. That was the first time it happened to me, and it was so glorious. But most places won't have that. You need to actually make sure that everything is transferred. All of the utilities are transferred, because if not, they might even send you a bill. Or I think that I've seen situations where certain title companies will put some money aside for those bills and utilities. I thought that was very interesting, where it's like, well, in case you don't change this, we will pay for it out of pocket so the seller doesn't have to. So we've talked about whether or not you need a lender. We talked a little bit about the inspection process, the buying process, the closing process. I also talked a little bit about the importance of you finding the right lender. You need to make sure that just like that you do your due diligence with your lender. I never go with the first lender I talk to. I always make sure that I have 3 to 4 lenders to guarantee that I actually get that loan. The right lender will fully understand your situation, and they would root for you. I'll give you an example. When I went to Colorado, I started working with the lender around February, even though I closed in November. The first lender that I had around February, even though I was making well above 6 figures and I had rental income coming in, my credit score was like, I think at the time I was around like 660. He gave me suggestions on how to boost my credit score, which I did. I went all the way to 720. This guy told me that I could only be approved for $250,000. In Colorado, $250,000, you could barely get an apartment in a decent area, okay? I eventually ended up talking to 3 and 4 other realtors. All of them told me something completely different. The moral of the story, in November, I ended up closing on a $700,000 duplex. My realtor even took I had some relocation money from my job. She meshed that in. I mean, she was a wizard. She was amazing. If you are going to buy a home, you cannot settle with one lender. Now, if that lender is somebody you've worked with, they know your situation, they understand you, they can get you there, do it. But if you go somewhere and some lender rejects you, keep calling. Now, if you call like 10 of them and they're telling you the same thing, honey, you must have quit. You know what I'm saying? Like, let's be realistic here. There are some things you need to work on. But at least then you know. After 10 of them, you would have had concrete information on the things you need to do to improve your situation so that you are ready to buy in 6 months to a year. With that discussion out of the way, let's talk about how you can negotiate like a pro. Strong negotiation skills can save you thousands of dollars, and they can secure you better terms. Key tactics here include understanding your market conditions. We already talked about that in the prior video. You really need to understand the market that you're in. You may need to act fast. Let me tell you something. When that good property shows up, you and your realtor have to be ready to make that offer right away. You need to leverage your due diligence. Use inspection findings to negotiate repairs and credit. And you need to have multiple financing options to strengthen your position. The third thing you need to negotiate like a pro is to be willing to walk away, honey. If terms are not in your favor, be prepared to say goodbye and have alternative options that will keep you from making rush decisions. I promise you, if you don't have the I am going to walk away energy, you will not win. In real estate, do not fall in love with any home, and always make sure that you have 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 homes ready to go in your docket. Also, the fourth thing I want you to understand is that negotiation is more than price. Ask for seller's concession. Can they cover closing costs? Can they include certain appliances? Can you request a flexible closing timeline that suits your needs? All of these are available to you, right? So don't just think in terms of price and money. There are other things that you can get as part of the negotiation. This is true for real estate, for career, and for business, honey. Do you need an LLC? Here's the truth about structure. If you're purchasing a property as an investment, forming an LLC can offer you some benefits, but those benefits are really limited when you're starting out. So let's talk about some of the liability protections an LLC can offer you. They separate your personal assets from business related risks. They can give you tax advantages, like an LLC will provide you flexibility in tax filing and also offer potential deductions. They give you credibility and professionalism. This is really important when you start to rise higher up as a professional investor and you're starting to seek out funding from other investors, right? They enhance your reputation if you're renting out your property or you're managing properties yourself. So when it comes to an LLC, when does an LLC make sense? If you own multiple properties and want asset protection, if you plan on holding rental properties or operating as a business, yes. If you want to limit your own liability, right, from tenant lawsuit, it might make sense, but a lot of lawyers will tell you that there are ways to get around it. When does it not make sense and when it's not necessary? If you're purchasing it as a primary residence, or if your lender does not allow for property purchases under an LLC. Buying under an LLC is very, very difficult. I think this in and of itself can be another video. There's a difference between you having an LLC and managing your properties under an LLC than you buying under your LLC. That's a lot more challenging, and I don't know that it's worth it because it's easier to acquire a property as you, the person, than as X, Y, and Z, the LLC. But that is a conversation that is bigger than this video. If you're not generating rental income or engaging in business activities, it may not be the right thing for you to do. Okay? I am not going to go into the nitty gritty of how you can form an LLC. I would highly suggest you read up on how to form an LLC because it's not an easy thing for you to do. Actually, it's not that challenging, but it requires a little bit more due diligence on your part. If you're buying your first or your second rental home, my suggestion is to just buy it under your own name. I do have an LLC where I manage my property. So it's almost like my LLC is the property management that manages my rental properties, but I do not buy properties under my LLC. That's just me. This was a long video, and I thank you guys for sticking with me. We talked about how to select the right realtor. We talked about the buying process, the inspection process, the closing process, and then we also talked a little bit about the importance of having the right lender and how you can negotiate like a pro. All of these things are going to be critical in ensuring that your buying process is smooth, doesn't have any delay, and that you come out on top. If this video gave you clarity, please share it with someone else who's ready to step into the buying process. Don't let them go blind. Hit that subscribe button for more no fluff, strategy first content made for women building wealth with intention. I'm going to have more videos coming up on how you can smoothly go through the real estate buying process so that you can secure your first property or your first investment property. And if you, my darling, are ready to surround yourself with a community of ambitious women, value-driven women doing the same thing, growing their wealth, leveraging their careers to build scalable side businesses and building long-term wealth, we are your community. Join us. You've got the tools. Now go validate every single move. Take action and engage in real estate today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.